Hi people, welcome to the first part of statistics series. Today we are going to talk about an important topic in statistics, hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing is a statistical analysis method that allows to test our assumptions about a popular parameter. We use it to estimate the relationship between two statistical variables. For example, a teacher might assume that 60% of their college students come from a lower middle class family, or a doctor might believe that a certain diet, dose, and discipline plan is 90% effective for diabetic patients. So there are two types of hypothesis testing in statistics, null and alternative. The null hypothesis is typically an equality hypothesis between population parameters, while the alternate hypothesis is essentially the inverse of null hypothesis. So to perform hypothesis testing, an analyst conducts measurements and analysis on a random sample of population to test a theory. They use a random population sample to test two hypotheses, null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Steps of hypothesis testing. There are 5 main steps in hypothesis testing. 1. Specify your null and alternative hypothesis. 2. Gather data. 3. Conduct a statistical test. 4. Determine rejection of your null hypothesis. 5. Present your result. Let's look at few examples to understand hypothesis testing better. First example, a teacher assumes that 60% of his college students come from lower middle class families. To test this assumption, he takes a sample of 100 students and surveys them. He finds that 56 out of 100 students come from a lower middle class families. Step 1. Specify your null and alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis H0, the proportion of students from lower middle class families is equal to 60%. Alternate hypothesis, the proportion of students from lower middle class family is less than 60%. Step 2. Gather the data. The teacher surveys 100 students and finds that 56 students come from lower middle class families. Step 3. Conduct a statistical test. The teacher uses one sample proportion test to determine the p-value. The p-value is 0.364, which is greater than the significance level of 0.05. This means that we fail to reject the null hypothesis, and there is not enough evidence to suggest the proportion of students from lower middle class families is less than 60%. Step 4. Determine rejection of your null hypothesis. Since the p-value is greater than the significance level, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Step 5. Present your results. The teacher can conclude that there is not enough evidence to suggest that the proportion of students from lower middle class families is less than 60%. Second example, a doctor believes that diet, dose, and discipline is 90% effective for diabetic patients. To test this belief, the doctor takes a sample of 50 diabetic patients and prescribes them the 3D treatment, which is diet, dose, and discipline treatment. After a month, the doctor finds that 42 out of 50 patients showed improvement. So what is the step 1 in our case? It will be to specify your null and alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis H0. The proportion of diabetic patients who show improvement with the 3D treatment is equal to 90. Alternative hypothesis H1 or HA. Proportion of diabetic patients who show improvement with 3D treatment is less than 90%. Step 2. Gather data. The doctor prescribes the 3D treatment to 50 diabetic patients and finds that 42 show improvement. Step 3. Conduct a statistical test. So the doctor uses a one sample proportion test to determine the p-value. The p-value is 0.066, which is greater than the significance level of 0.05. This means that we fail to reject the null hypothesis, and there is not enough evidence to suggest that the proportion of diabetic patients who show improvement with the 3D treatment is less than 90%. Step 4. Determine rejection of your null hypothesis. Since the p-value is greater than the significance level, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Step 5. Present your results. The doctor can conclude that there is not enough evidence to suggest that the proportion of diabetic patients who show improvement with the 3D treatment is less than 90%. So that's a brief overview of what hypothesis testing is and how it works. We will study about p-value in the upcoming videos, but remember that hypothesis testing is a critical tool in statistical analysis, and I hope that these videos have been beneficial in enhancing your comprehension of significant statistical concepts. If you found this video helpful, please don't hesitate to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.